What does it feel like to be lost in complete darkness, surrounded by cold, dripping walls, with no idea which way leads to safety? This is the chilling story of 3 experienced cavers who entered the depths of Sloans Valley Cave late one night. What began as an exciting adventure quickly turned into a fight for survival when one of them, Tony Hughes, made a fateful decision that left him alone, lost, and desperate in the pitch-black maze. What went wrong? What happened to Tony? Stay with us as we unravel this mysterious and harrowing tale. Nestled in the beautiful and remote Appalachian foothills of southeastern Kentucky, Sloans Valley Cave is a true hidden gem for explorers and nature lovers. Located near the Cumberland River, this cave system stretches over 24.6 miles, making it one of the longest caves in Kentucky and among the top 100 longest caves in the world. The cave is just a short drive south of Burnside, Kentucky, off U.S. Highway 27, and lies between Somerset, the last major city in the area, and Knoxville, Tennessee. Surrounded by dense forests and rolling hills, Sloans Valley Cave offers a unique underground adventure that showcases the beauty and history of the region. Sloans Valley Cave is not only impressive for its size, but also for its fascinating geology. The cave is formed in Mississippian limestone, specifically the St. Genevieve and St. Louis layers of the Slade Formation. This gives the cave its stunning rock formations and unique features such as the Big Room, one of the largest underground chambers in Kentucky. The Big Room measures a jaw-dropping 750 feet in length, 130 feet in width, and 90 feet in height, an awe-inspiring sight for anyone lucky enough to visit. With at least 16 known entrances scattered across the area, the cave system is accessible from various points. One of the most famous entrances is the Great Rock Sink, a dramatic karst window with towering limestone walls up to 80 feet tall. This natural sinkhole features 2 main entrances into the cave. The larger West Cave entrance, which is 50 feet wide and 15 feet tall, and the smaller East Cave entrance, which leads to a series of once flooded chambers. Sloans Valley Cave is steeped in history. Early explorers and settlers were drawn to its vast chambers and unique features. In one section of the cave, near what was once the Cumberland River entrance, the remains of saltpeter mining operations have been found. These remains, including casts of old vats, tell the story of the cave's role in providing resources during the early 19th century. The cave is also home to breathtaking natural wonders. Inside, visitors can find crystal formations, flowing underground streams, and even a natural fountain. Some parts of the cave feature a so-called Lost River and a 350-yard underground boat ride, offering a truly unforgettable experience. The incredible scenery of stalactites, stalagmites, and sparkling walls is like stepping into another world. Whether you're a seasoned caver or simply someone looking for a unique adventure, Sloans Valley Cave offers an unforgettable journey into the heart of Kentucky's natural beauty. Guided tours are available for visitors who want to explore this underground wonder while learning about its fascinating history and geology. So pack your gear, bring your sense of adventure, and get ready to discover one of Kentucky's greatest treasures. In 1981, on the night of Sunday, July 19th, Tony Hughes, a 17-year-old seasoned caver, prepared for an adventure with his companions, Tom Hughes and Rob Riemann. The group planned to explore the southern extension of Sloans Valley Cave in Pulaski County, Kentucky. All 3 were experienced cavers, well trained in navigating underground systems. Tony, the most familiar with Sloans Valley, had ventured into the cave at least 6 times before. His knowledge of its passages and routes gave the group confidence. The trio spent time planning their expedition. They packed essential caving gear, including helmets, headlamps, ropes, field maps, and snacks to sustain them through the long night. They knew that Sloans Valley Cave, with its intricate network of passages, required careful preparation. Tony brought his field map of the cave in order to guide them through the maze-like system. They decided to enter the cave shortly after midnight in order to avoid the summer heat. As they reached the entrance, the weather was calm but humid, with remnants of heavy spring rain still visible. Outside, the forested area around the cave was quiet, save for the occasional chirping of crickets. Inside the cave, the air was damp and cool, with a slight musty smell typical of underground systems. Water dripped from the limestone walls, and pools of standing water dotted the cave floor. The group moved deeper into the southern part of the cave, their headlamps lighting up the rough, rocky walls around them. The beams of light created eerie shadows that danced across the dark, narrow passages. Every sound they made echoed in the vast underground space. Tony led the way, guiding his two companions through the winding tunnels. The trio moved carefully, watching their steps to avoid slipping on wet rocks and ducking under sharp stalactites hanging from the ceiling. After exploring for a few hours, they came to something that was blocking their way, a steep drop. It looked scary in the dim light. A rope hung down the slope, which they could use to climb down, but it was covered in thick mud, probably from the recent rain that had flooded some parts of the cave. The mud made the rope slippery and dangerous, which would be difficult even for people who were experienced at caving. Tony, feeling confident in his skills and experience, decided to go down first. "I'll check it out," he said to Tom and Rob, trying to sound calm despite the tension in the air. He gripped the muddy rope tightly, testing its strength before slowly sliding down. At around 3 a.m., Tony grabbed hold of the muddy rope and carefully slid down to a narrow ledge just below the top. The rope felt slick and unstable in his hands, the mud making it nearly impossible to grip properly. As he reached the ledge, a sinking realization hit him. He couldn't climb back up. The mud-coated rope was too slippery, and the slope was too steep for him to pull himself back to safety. His heart began to race as he looked up at Tom and Rob, who were waiting up above. "I can't climb back up," he shouted, his voice echoing through the cave. Despite the tension in his voice, Tony tried to stay calm. "Don't worry," he told them. "I'll find another way out and meet you at the entrance." While trusting Tony's experience and judgment, Tom and Rob nodded. They hesitated for a moment, worried about leaving their friend, but they eventually turned and began retracing their steps back towards the surface. At the same time, Tony turned to face the darkness below, looking for a different way to go. He kept going, venturing further into the cave. But as he went deeper, he found a new problem. The heavy spring rains had flooded many of the lower tunnels. Water filled the passageways in front of him, cold and murky, reflecting the weak light from his headlamp like a dark, wavy mirror. Each step was more challenging than the last. The cold water rose to his waist in some places, soaking him through and chilling him to the bone. Also, during his struggle down the rope, he had lost his field map, the one thing that could have helped him navigate the cave's complex network of twisting tunnels. Now, without the map, every passage looked the same. Left or right, up or down, he couldn't tell which way would lead to safety. Tony's ordeal was harrowing. He stumbled over jagged rocks and waded through waist-deep water searching for an exit. The damp air chilled him to the bone, and exhaustion set in. His muscles ached from the physical effort, and his hands were raw from gripping wet, rough surfaces. The cave was eerily silent, except for the occasional sound of dripping water echoing through the tunnels. Hours passed, and Tony began to feel the weight of his predicament. He was alone in the vast, dark cave with no clear sense of direction. Panic threatened to overtake him, but he forced himself to stay calm and focused. He knew that his best chance of survival was to keep moving and try to find his way back to the rope. Now, at the same time, Tom and Rob had gotten back to the surface, and they realized that Tony wasn't with them. Worried about their friend, they decided to go back to the place where the rope was and look for him. They went back twice, shouting his name and searching for any sign of him. When they couldn't find him, they contacted the Pulaski County Rescue Squad, or PCRS, to ask for help. By 10 a.m., the PCRS had assembled a team of 8 rescuers. Equipped with specialized caving gear and extensive knowledge of the cave system, the team entered Sloans Valley Cave to search for Tony. They methodically explored the southern extension, focusing on areas where Tony was most likely to be. Now, as the rescuers searched, Tony managed to find his way back to the rope drop. Summoning the last reserves of his strength, he struggled to climb the muddy rope. His hands slipped repeatedly, but he refused to give up. After a grueling effort, he finally reached the top and began making his way towards the cave entrance. At around noon, Tony came out from the cave, exhausted and covered in mud. His relief was immense as he stepped out into the daylight, safe at last. Unbeknownst to him, though, the rescue team was still inside the cave, combing through the passages in search of him. The rescuers finally came out of the cave, and they found out that Tony had already gotten out by himself. Now, while everyone was relieved that everything turned out okay, there were quite a few lessons to be learned from this. The cavers relied on their flashlights as their main source of light. But in a cave as vast and complex as Sloans Valley, that limited light made it very easy to lose their sense of direction. The darkness of a cave can be overwhelming, and without enough light, it is much easier to get disoriented. Looking back on it, it would have been safer if Tony had checked his alternate route before sending Tom and Rob back to the surface. By staying together as a group, they could have supported each other and avoided the risks of splitting up in such a dangerous environment. This story is a reminder of the importance of teamwork, proper planning, and always having a backup plan when exploring caves. In the end, Tony was lucky to find his way out, but the ordeal could have had a much worse outcome. For all cavers, this serves as a lesson about the unpredictable nature of caves, and the need for extra caution when venturing into the unknown.
Blue Spring State Park in Florida is like heaven for scuba divers. With proper certification, divers can explore an underwater world that descends 120 feet into crystal clear water, in addition to a dream-like maze of winding rock formations and passageways. The spring is also home to a large population of manatees. It seems like something out of a Disney movie. But in reality, there's a reason why the park requires diving certification. It's quite dangerous. And while accidents here are not common, they do happen. One of the worst took place in October of 2013. 2 divers had a serious catastrophe under the surface of Blue Spring. Not only did it make headline news around the country, but it also left Volusia County in a state of deep shock and fear. The event. October 9th, 2013 was a Wednesday. It may have been the middle of fall, but in central Florida it was warm, sunny, and characteristically beautiful. Samuel Slack, a 36-year-old diving enthusiast from Edgewater, was headed to Blue Spring State Park. Along with him was his friend and diving partner Daniel Van Sickle, a 37-year-old from New Smyrna Beach. Like many who came to visit Blue Spring Park, Slack and Van Sickle were intending to scuba dive. Both men had loaded up on all the essential diving equipment. But for Samuel Slack, there was one thing missing. He didn't have the proper certification to dive below 60 feet. His diving partner, Daniel Van Sickle, had previously obtained an open water and advanced certificate in New Smyrna Beach, but he was alone in that. Sometime in the early afternoon, both divers drove up to the entrance of Blue Spring State Park. According to its website, Blue Spring State Park requires that all divers show proof of certification before entering the water. It also says that divers must leave their certifications visible on the dashboard of their parked car. What Samuel Slack did have, according to the Daytona Beach News Journal, was a novice open water diver card. This card meant that Slack was legally allowed to enter the water with his diving gear, but he wasn't allowed to dive deep. Upon arrival, both men signed paperwork promising that they would not dive below 60 feet that day. Thanks to this, once they were inside the park, both Samuel Slack and diving partner Daniel Van Sickle were able to assemble their gear and hop in, fins and all, without any further objection from park rangers or other local authorities. The water in Blue Spring is a comfortable 72 degrees Fahrenheit. Midday, in the middle of the week, it would have been pristine. Balmy sunshine, cool, clear water, and less crowded than in summer or on a weekend. Despite the open underwater space, Slack and Van Sickle intended to stick together for safety reasons. This is actually something the Florida State Park Service requires divers to do. Every diver must have a diving buddy, and they must stay together for the entirety of the dive. The two men may have been following this particular safety protocol, but, as records later collected from their wrist-worn diving computer show, they certainly weren't holding true to their signed agreement not to dive below 60 feet. Records show that Van Sickle and Slack dove as deep as 116 feet, virtually hitting the bottom of the deepest recesses of Blue Spring. Now, despite breaking the rules, everything appeared to be going well for Slack and Van Sickle, but then, at around 90 feet below the surface, Slack turned to Van Sickle and made a gesture that still haunts him to this day. Using his finger, Slack made a slashing motion across his own neck. Van Sickle could see there was panic in his diving partner's eyes. This slashing motion was Samuel Slack trying to communicate that he wasn't getting any oxygen. In an effort to calm him down, Daniel Van Sickle took off his own regulator and handed it to the frantic Samuel Slack. This is a technique known as buddy breathing, where one person breathes through the regulator for a short time before handing it back to the other person. By temporarily sharing oxygen this way, Van Sickle hoped he'd be able to buy enough time for Slack to regain focus and attempt to get back out of the water alive. But instead, when it came time for Slack to return the regulator to Van Sickle, he wouldn't give it up. Van Sickle pleaded with him, trying to signal that he needed a turn breathing the oxygen. Slack wouldn't budge. Eventually, in tragic desperation, Daniel Van Sickle reached over and snatched his regulator out of the mouth of Samuel Slack. Van Sickle immediately swam all the way up to the surface to call for help. From the water, he yelled to a park maintenance worker and said they should call 911 immediately. Just before 3 p.m., emergency crews in Volusia County were notified of the situation at Blue Spring Park, and personnel were immediately sent to the location. Right after getting the attention of the maintenance worker, Daniel Van Sickle dove back underwater and swam all the way back down to where Samuel Slack still was, 100 feet below. This was perfectly reasonable given the circumstances, but as some of you may already know, swimming rapidly from a depth of 90 feet to the surface and then back down to 90 feet again is normally a really bad idea. Normally, divers are very careful about making periodic stops on their ascent back up from deep underwater. Otherwise, they risk contracting the uniquely horrific condition of decompression sickness. Decompression sickness is essentially when bubbles are formed in your body tissue, and it is exactly what hit Daniel Van Sickle like a ton of bricks while trying to rescue his diving partner. Also known by its nickname, the Bends, decompression sickness can be excruciatingly painful, and in extreme cases, it can even rapidly kill you. Pushing his body to the limit, Van Sickle arrived next to Slack, but this time found him simply floating in place. There was something eerie about the stillness of Slack's body. Nevertheless, Van Sickle wasted no time in continuing to try and rescue his friend and diving partner. Van Sickle was able to inflate Slack's vest, which provided enough flotation for Van Sickle to carry Slack's motionless body up to the surface. The aftermath. Paramedics arrived at Blue Spring State Park that afternoon to find 2 divers in need of immediate medical attention. One was the unconscious Samuel Slack, and the other was Daniel Van Sickle, who was now succumbing to unbearable decompression sickness. Both men's lives were in serious danger. Van Sickle was rushed to a hospital in nearby Orlando and placed in a hyperbaric chamber. This is an intensive treatment used by Navy SEALs for the most extreme cases of decompression sickness. Meanwhile, rescue workers attempted to revive Samuel Slack on the shore. Sadly, they were unsuccessful. Slack was pronounced dead on sight, the victim of what was later ruled an accidental drowning. Eventually, Van Sickle was released from the hospital, but despite having survived, he now had to deal not only with the death of his friend, but being the center of an investigation. The Volusia County Sheriff's Office inspected all of the equipment that was used that day, analyzed dive records from both men's wrist-worn computers, and they also questioned Van Sickle. Van Sickle provided an account of the events that was consistent with the dive records. But later, according to the Daytona Beach News Journal, he was advised by lawyers not to cooperate any further with the investigation. Now, as far as I was able to uncover, he has not spoken publicly about the incident since. A spokesperson for the sheriff's office told the press that foul play was not suspected. Instead, investigators were more interested in the possibility of faulty equipment. However, despite scouring all the men's gear, they couldn't find anything wrong with it. In fact, they even found that Samuel Slack's tank was still more than halfway full. Now, how could that be? How could Samuel Slack drown with breathable air literally strapped to his back? One illuminating but frustrating clue came after inspecting the valve on Slack's tank. It was turned only 1/4 of the way open. According to diving experts, that is not normal. If the valve isn't opened all the way, it can create difficulty breathing. We may never know for certain, but it seems like the best explanation for Slack's demise had something to do with his improperly opened valve on his tank. He suddenly found himself unable to get enough air, and in the depths of the water, he panicked. It was an issue that arose from his not knowing how to properly use the equipment, and an issue that persisted due to his not being able to handle the ensuing situation properly. Two things, better training and proper certification, would likely have prevented this. But as we know, Samuel Slack never had either one. This proves, once again, that even if they might seem arbitrary sometimes, diving regulations are put in place for a reason. Slack didn't see any reason why he couldn't dive into the depths with his existing level of experience. And tragically, that puts him in the company of many other divers who overestimated their abilities and are now no longer with us. We hope you enjoyed this video and found it informative. Please, share your thoughts on the story of Samuel Slack and Daniel Van Sickle in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and please be sure to like the video and subscribe for more content like this in the near future. That's all for now. See you next time.